This video is brought to you by Dehancer. What's up guys, and welcome back to another video of I can only find time to upload a video every 3 to 6 months. So I finally remembered the password to my YouTube account and I'm back with another video. And today's video is a super exciting one and one that I've been working on for a while actually, editing digital photos to look like film. So it's gonna be two parts to this video. Part one, where I simply edit some digital photos to look like film, show you a little bit about how the Dehancer Lightroom plugin works, which by the way is really good and possibly better than some of the film emulation softwares I've used in the past. And part two, where I do a comparison between real film and photos that I edited to look like film. So I actually went out with my Nikon F3 loaded with a roll of Kodak Colorplus 200, and I brought a digital camera along with me to get a true side-by-side comparison between the two. I just want to preface this video by saying I'm in no way being paid by Dehancer to make this video. They reached out to me and said something along the lines of, Emrys, you're the best photographer we've ever seen. Please, 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 won't you make a video about our product? You don't have to say you like it, but please make a video. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. No, but in all seriousness, Dehancer did reach out to me and ask if I'd like to test out their software and make a video giving my honest thoughts and opinions about it. So let's begin. So a lot of you know me as a film photographer, videographer, but what a lot of you may not know is that I actually make hip hop music on the side as well. I know, right? And I needed to do an album cover shoot for an upcoming song that I'm releasing soon. And I called up my friend Liam, who you've seen on the channel many times, and Adi, who's been on the channel a couple times as well. And I booked out a studio and asked them to shoot some photos of me. They didn't have to edit them or anything like that. I just needed them to come and shoot some photos of me for the album cover. And I thought, what a perfect way to sort of test out the Dehancer software for this video, than just to get some digital photos in the studio for my album cover and then just edit it using Dehancer and sort of show you guys what I did and what steps I went through to edit these photos. I gotta say, I'm really happy with the results. Initially, I did a comparison trying to edit digital photos to look like film using Dehancer. But when I was actually using Dehancer just to edit photos to look like film in the sense of film in general, not like looking at a film photo and trying to make the digital one look like it. So just editing digital photos to have sort of a film look. I actually preferred using the software for that than like trying to match the software exactly. So we just set up a green backdrop and we were going to be shooting on this crazy 11 to 24mm Canon EF lens. And then we adapted that to the, what camera was it? I don't know too much about digital cameras. Psych, I do. I actually work at a digital camera shop for a living. No, we were shooting on the Canon R5 Mark II digital camera and we adapted an 11 to 24mm Canon EF f4 lens. So we really wanted to get some cool, like ultra wide angle shots. So jumping into the software here, you can see sort of some of the images that I shot on the day using the Canon R5 Mark II. And obviously with an ultra wide lens, you know, that backdrop wasn't gonna stand a chance to sort of fill out the whole background. And of course, I'm planning on editing these using Dehancer. So I didn't really do too much editing in Lightroom initially because I kind of wanted a blank canvas for when I sent it into Dehancer. So then I hopped into Photoshop just to sort of extend that green backdrop, just literally selecting it and using Content Aware Fill, super quick and easy just to sort of extend that backdrop. So for all photographers, film or digital, this is a nice sort of handy trick to be able to use to extend your backdrop when you're shooting ultra wide like this. And then of course, just did some minor blemish editing just to get rid of any spots and marks that I sort of had on my face. And you can see here the colors are sort of very muted, neutral. There's like nothing crazy about this photo. It's just a standard raw file with like a little bit of a contrast increase. And then I saved it and hopped back into Lightroom and then right-clicked Edit in Dehancer plugin. And then you can see here, obviously here's the image. It's already got sort of a basic edit on it, which I'm going to switch off in a second. So when you switch on here, you can see on the left, there's a lot of sort of different film presets that you can use. And they've got all kinds of film from Agfa, some black and white stuff, Fuji stocks, Portra 400, Colorplus, Cinestill, you know, almost any film stock you can think of will likely be in this software, barring, you know, like repackaged films and things like that. But all your sort of standard film stocks will be on here. Color negative, C41 positive, all those different things. But what I actually prefer to do is not actually use one of the plugins. I prefer to sort of use the tools within Dehancer to edit to look like film. So I actually turned off the film preset dial and hopped over to the right where you can see all the tools that you can sort of use to edit your photo to look like film in Dehancer. So you can see there's a bunch of different sort of tools within Dehancer that you can use to edit your photos. And I'll be honest with you, I messed with a few of them and there's a handful of them that I actually like using, and some of them that are, let's just say, I didn't really notice what they were doing that much, or it's just too slight of an adjustment for me to sort of warrant doing anything with it. So of course you got your source, your film developer, film compression, expand, print, color head, film grain, halation, bloom, film damage, overscan, and vignette. And jumping into it, I start off usually with the film developer, obviously because that just makes a bit of sense. And there's a few tools in here that you can use, like contrast boost, gamma correction, color separation, and color boost. What I usually do when I'm editing is just sort of mess around with the sliders to sort of see what they're doing, like overdo it and then dial it back, just so I can sort of see what each one does instead of trying to make minute changes and not actually seeing the difference. So if I turn that off and on there, you can see a little bit of what the film developer has done. And then film compression is a super cool one over here. If I zoom in a little bit to the highlights, let me just punch out a bit. Just notice the highlights on my face over there. So that film compression basically compresses those highlights so you don't have anything blowing out. And that's, I'm assuming, has to do with the dynamic range that film has. Of course, like, you will be less likely to blow out your highlights on film than when shooting in digital. Not that any of these highlights are blown out. But I feel like you can quite easily overdo this. Like, if your photo initially, your digital photo is sort of a little bit blown out and it's a raw file and you have that information, then using this film compression works really well. But if your highlights are sort of already exposed well, like if you expose for the highlights, then I probably wouldn't use film compression just because it can make it look a little weird. And then in expand over here, you can sort of use your black point and white point, but I usually don't mess with this that much just because, you know, I haven't really found it necessary. It just kind of looks like adding contrast. Then moving into bloom, which is one of my favorite things in here. It's sort of like a highlight bloom, which I'm sure you've seen if you've ever seen anyone shooting through a black mist or a pro mist filter. It adds a sort of like glow around your highlights, which a lot of film does as well. Like, a lot of film stocks naturally have a sort of highlight bloom, especially if you're shooting like from a dark area and there's like a bright window or something. You'll usually notice around that window like a beautiful sort of glow around that highlight, which is the light coming through the window. And you can see here, if I overdo it a little bit, you can sort of see where it's affecting and what it's doing. And it does actually have a mode called mask mode, so you can see exactly where you're affecting the highlights within the image. And as you can see here, it's also super easy to overdo this. So you kind of want to be very sort of delicate with how you edit over here. You definitely don't want to overdo it and it just gives it a sort of cheap look. And then of course, every film photographer's favorite effect, halation. We all know what halation is. It's got to do with film, basically light passing through the film and then bouncing back onto the red layer within the film, causing a sort of red glow around certain parts of your image. And personally, I don't like to add halation that much. I sometimes do it when I'm editing video, and Dehancer actually has, you know, video editing plugins as well for like Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, which is what I use. But I personally don't like to add halation that much just because I can find it makes your image look really shitty. But yeah, there's a lot of sort of presets you can use here. I prefer to do custom, but that's just because I really want to do such subtle edits over here. And then of course, hopping back into the source over here, which is actually what comes before the developer. It's basically just editing your raw file. You can do your exposure compensation, temperature compensation, tint compensation, which I do mess with a little bit just to sort of get that white balance looking a bit better. I was kind of going for like a Portra 400 cross with Ektachrome kind of vibe. So like a little bit more blue, maybe slightly warmer than Ektachrome, but definitely more blue than Portra 400. And then of course, what is film photography without a bit of grain? So there's a ton of presets over here for different grain sizes, 8mm, 16, 35, 65. 65 will obviously have a smaller grain structure because it's basing it off what would be a bigger negative. I do want a bit of grain. I don't want it to be too fine because then it almost looks like it's not there. So I'll probably do like 65mm, but 500 ISO or 35, something like that. And you can see in the shadows, there's really not that much noise. And what I find as well when I'm shooting film is my shadows usually don't have that much noise. It's usually in the midtones and the highlights where I see that noise the most. But I'm sort of happy with that. If I do a before and after, you can kind of see the effects that it's had. It's very subtle, but it's definitely elevated this photo quite a bit. And there's some sort of other options in here as well, like film damage, where you can add some grain and things like that, and overscan, which personally I would never use, but it could be cool if you're editing like an album cover or something like that, which I suppose I'm doing, but this ain't the vibe I'm going for. But you could do like an overscan vibe, and just to give it that really sort of analog feel, if you wanted it to look like, you know, a screenshot from an actual roll of, you know, video film. And then what I do is just save the project, hop back into Lightroom, and you can really see the difference that this edit has made. If I show you the complete before we even hopped into Photoshop and did our basic edits versus the edit in Dehancer, you can see it made a huge difference. And I'm personally really happy with the look. I highly recommend trying out Dehancer if you are trying to get a more sort of filmy look in your images. So of course, editing photos to look like film is one thing, but let's see how Dehancer stacks up when trying to emulate real film. Of course, I mentioned I went out with a digital camera and a film camera and shot the exact same photo on both. And then I used Dehancer to sort of match the look of the film photos as close as I could. So let's hop in and see how it goes. Trying to recreate the film look using a digital camera. So we're going to be shooting on the Nikon F3 and the Nikon Z8. So we're staying within the Nikon family. So what I'm going to be doing is shooting some digital photos on the Nikon Z8 and trying to make them match the film photos that I take on my Nikon F3. Okay, so first thing we need to do is load up some film into the Nikon F3. So let's do that quickly and then we're gonna head out. We're in a place in Cape Town called Constantia, and there's this really beautiful sort of walkway area. I think there's a pond or a dam up there as well, so we're gonna take some photos out there, but let's load some film quick. So one of the rules with today's video is we're going to match the settings from the digital camera to my film camera over here. Because we're shooting a 200 ISO speed film, I want to set the camera to be at 200 ISO the whole day as well. And any settings that I get from the meter on the film camera, I'm going to match on the Nikon Z8, just to sort of have a fair playing field, I think. So let's go. So I am here with Havana today, who is behind the camera. So I've got my tripod with me and we're going to start off with a portrait. So I'm going to set up the tripod so you guys can see what we're doing, and we're going to start off the day with a portrait of Havana right here in this field. 2, 1. Okay. And then this photo over here, which is probably one of my favorite photos I've shot this year, the film one, of course. And of course I did shoot it on digital as well. And one thing you'll notice with these two images is that the film one sort of has a soft painterliness to it. Like if I zoom into that willow tree in the background and I show you the leaves over there, they almost fade into one another. Of course, it's got to do with the resolution of 35mm film, the focus, things like that. But you can see all the leaves sort of blend into a painterly kind of look, like they blend into one another. Whereas when I hop over to the digital one, you can see there's almost like a clinical sharpness all the way through. Of course, it's a much higher resolution sensor that we're working with. But when you zoom into that willow in the background to the same areas, you can see every individual leaf over there. I mean, of course, this is pixel peeping, but when you zoom out, what I find is that you can almost notice that clinical sharpness when you're looking at the image as a whole. Whereas when you look at the film one, it sort of has this softness to it, like a softness to the entire image, which you just don't quite get on the digital. It's pouring now, and we are like
not prepared.
700 meters away from where we parked, so we got to walk in the rain with all our camera equipment. So I think we're going to chill under that tree for a bit. Hopefully it softens the rain a little bit, and then we'll get back to the car. So we got caught in the rain and it started pouring. We got through, let's see how many photos we got through. We got through 13 photos. So I think maybe we'll stop somewhere else to try and finish the rest of the roll, but that is it for this location. Okay, so the rain didn't clear up. So we are on a new location, on a new day, and of course we have a new camera. So I'm no longer shooting on the Z8. Today we have the Fuji X-H2, which is a crop sensor camera. So I'm gonna have to do some calculations in order to match the focal length up to my Nikon F3, but we're gonna give it a go. We're We're in a new location, as I mentioned, so we're gonna try get some cool shots over this side and then see what we can do with Dehancer. So it is still very early in the morning. It's like just after 5 a.m. and the light is still slowly coming up. So we're shooting on obviously a 200 speed film Colorplus. So we are getting like 30th of a second shutter speed readings. So some of these photos may be a little bit blurry, but as the light comes up, I think we'll start getting a little bit faster shutter speed. So that should improve. So another thing Dehancer offers on top of their Lightroom plugin is plugins for your video editing software. I personally use DaVinci Resolve, and I've used the Dehancer plugin for DaVinci as well. And if you're curious to what that looks like, I'll leave a link over here. My previous video that I uploaded, all the A-roll or the talking head sequence was shot and edited using Dehancer, the Dehancer plugin for DaVinci Resolve. But they have a plugin for DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro. I think they have one for Final Cut, and another really cool thing they have for editing, I think just photos, is an app, a Dehancer app, like the Lightroom app on your phone. I edit a lot of my photos in the Lightroom app on my phone, but there's a Dehancer app as well, which is super cool to be able to edit digital photos to look like film kind of on the go. So if you guys are keen to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description where you can sort of check out the app and things like that. And I am actually a registered affiliate for Dehancer. So if you do want to support the channel, check out Dehancer and use my code to get 10% off. That code is just my name, Emrys, E-M-R-H-Y-S, all caps. That's the code. And if you check out Dehancer and you want to try it out for yourself, you can get 10% off using code Emrys. And of course, that supports the channel, and any support to the channel is always appreciated. Yeah, this is sort of probably my last video of the year. It would be cool to do like my favorite photos I've shot in 2024, but I don't know if I'll find the time for that. I'm flying up to Joburg to record more music. I do music as well. It's another hobby. So if you're interested in that, check out the link in the description. I'll leave a link to my music in there as well if you want to check that out. And yeah, let me know what you thought of the video. Subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you thought. Drop me a comment, like this video, and yeah, stick along for the ride. I've got some really cool video ideas for 2025, and I can't wait to share them all with you. See you in the next one.